let's see. How to use PowerPoint. Excellent. So hi, this is me. Hi, I'm Michelle. I design and build digital interfaces. What does that mean? It means I am formerly a designer. That's what I went to school for, but I do front-end development now. So that's kind of where I live. And I do not only work for my own clients, but also I part-time contract at Target. Target's headquartered here in Minneapolis, which is where I live. And so I'm doing UX strategy work for them on some applications. That's actually super fun because the work that I do on WordPress, I can bring into these other applications. Then the work I do there, I can bring into my work with WordPress. Just as an aside, that's really super fun. But I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about the brief history of the internet. So how we got here. I'm just gonna go from the beginning to now. How did we get to where we are in WordPress, and how come we're going to be talking about atomic design? So before the web, there were these things called pages. They were printed on the dead trees. And they were not digital, but they were basically made up everything that you could read, right? So books, magazines, literature, posters, I mean, everything was on pages. And the thing about pages is that once you make them, they don't change, right? They stay exactly the way they are, which is why in print design, if you make a mistake and it goes to production, you now have to redo your entire project. So that's kind of hard. But several years ago, these things called web pages were born, and they were static HTML. There wasn't even CSS, but they were thought of as pages because we were so used to thinking about content as being a page, right? And so we wanted to figure out a way to conceptualize this new computer internet thing, and we decided to call them pages, and so the web page was born. But pretty soon, you know, we got kind of sick of static stuff. We wanted to be able to do more interesting things, and we started working on databases and stuff, and from there sites became a lot more dynamic, right? So WordPress is one of these things, right? It's built on databases and templates. It's taking data, it's rendering it, it's constantly changing and updating. You don't have to update a million static HTML files. So WordPress is one of these things. And the thing about dynamic pages is that they're a lot more interesting than static pages, right? Because they're not self-contained. Like I said, your content can update, it can influence other content, and it can be connected in new and exciting ways. So now we're in the age of the content management system. And what are the things that we're talking about here? We're talking about stuff like themes and plugins and metadata and relationships. We're basically talking about one-to-one or one-to-many relationships. So things like this post is related to this post, this author is related to this post, this comment is related to this post, this comment is related to this other comment. There's all sorts of relationships happening here. But we're still thinking about pages, right? So, okay, I am struggling to have my controller. There it is. I can operate PowerPoint and Zoom at the same time. Great. So we have all of this dynamic data, but we're still thinking about static pages, and the two are not really meshing very well, right? We want to do more than just display non-changing content, right? Like I said, there's all these relationships. WordPress core by default, without even changing it, has so much interesting stuff. We have archives, we have users, we have databases, we have filtering, we have interactivity, we have conditionals, and then you build stuff on top of it. You have e-commerce, you have memberships, you have portals, you have all these different things, these different ways that you can interact with content. Another thing that we've learned is that unique pieces of content can be smaller than pages. When widgets were introduced, for one thing, a widget is something that could exist. It's its own self-contained thing that could exist in multiple places, and it doesn't necessarily matter what page it's on. A lot of other pieces of content can be reused in multiple places. So again, these are things that are smaller than pages. They are unique. Also, what we've learned is that how something works is not necessarily dependent on what it says. So that means similar functional elements can be used to display different types of content. For example, a card, if you look at stuff like Pinterest, they use the card model. A card can be used to display, you know, a motivational poster, but it could also be used to display a recipe, or it could also be used to display, you know, a workout routine, or it could also be used to display a user profile, right? But they're all cards. It's the same kind of card. A call to action could be the same layout, right? It could have your title and your content and your button, but it displays very, very different content, but it works the same way, right? Another thing that we've started to realize is that our experiences should be customizable. And I'm not just talking about the content. Now, it's really cool when you have custom content when you go somewhere, but imagine if the entire experience was custom. If your layouts, your headers, your footers, your interactive elements were all kind of personalized and contextual. Now, we don't, personalization and customization is kind of an interesting topic because, you know, we all love it when we have a conversation with our coworkers verbally about Disney World, and then, you know, that evening our Facebook feed is feeding us Disney World ads. Like, that's a little creepy and totally happened to me yesterday. But so that's a little bit creepy, but it is really nice, you know, for one thing with WordPress, when you're logged in, you might have a different experience than when you're not logged in, right? There's more and more personalization that we could have. So now, what are these things that we're starting to talk about? Patterns, systems, iterating, prototyping, maintaining, scaling, like these very agile, malleable, compartmentalized pieces that just don't fit with a traditional page model of like title, content, text, sidebar, here you go. And that is where atomic design comes in. So atomic design is a term that was coined by Brad Frost in 2013. It was also turned into a book, a whole bunch of other things. But the point of atomic design is, you know, here's the big idea. I have a slide that has a light bulb. It's very useful. The big idea is the web is made out of unique, reorderable, reusable elements that can be combined in different ways to build content structures. So reorderable and reusable, combining in different ways to build unique content. What it also means, content of a page will determine the layout rather than the other way around. So what content you have should determine the layout that you're seeing versus the other way around. All of these elements are self-contained, which means that they can exist anywhere they're needed. So it doesn't matter where they are, they can exist within any context and they will still make sense because the entire site is functioning as a system. And therefore, all of the elements are going to blend seamlessly into the site, and both the functionality and the appearance feel cohesive. So cool, kind of on board with that. All right. What does that look like from a structural perspective, right? So that's kind of the philosophy. The single-use principle, if any of you have heard of that, it's a programming principle that basically means each thing should do one thing and do it well. We don't want big, massive, behemoth things to try to do everything. We want, you know, very small, streamlined things that each thing should do one thing well. We also have the principle of dry, which means don't repeat yourself. If you can abstract something into something reusable, do so, right? If you're going to use it more than twice, you probably want to abstract it into something that you can repeat multiple times. So these are a couple of principles that are behind atomic design. Atomic design, when you're building atomic design and you're writing the code, it usually has a modular file structure. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of content templates and template parts. If you've done WordPress theme development, you might recognize some of that kind of stuff. So templates and template parts. It also means that your CSS, so when you're styling it, those are probably going to be compartmentalized as well and organized by specificity and type. So if you've done any kind of work with a CSS preprocessor like Sass, you might have some experience with some modular CSS as well. There's a few related concepts to atomic design that you may have heard of, and I kind of want to bring these up so you know how they all relate to each other. So one is a component library. So a component library is a set of pre-built elements that can be reused across a site or an app. If any of you have ever used Bootstrap or something similar, Bootstrap is a component library. It's just a set of tools. It's a set of pre-built tools that exist that you can use however you want. The thing about a component library is it has all the tools, but it doesn't necessarily have the guidelines on where or when to best use them. So it's just the tool set without any rules. On the flip side, you have style guides, right? Now, style guides, especially if you have a design background or you've worked on brands, you've probably seen this stuff, but this is basically instructions for why and how to use visual elements. They can be very, very specific. They usually tell you about color, about typography, about spacing, about imagery, but they don't actually contain any of the tools. They are just the rules. So now we've got component libraries, which are tools, style guides, which are rules. Then we have design systems, and design systems are kind of a combination of those two things. So you have components, and those components are then unified under a set of standards. So a design system is kind of the thing that we're working on when we're building with atomic design, is putting this whole thing together. So atomic design, we're going to get into it. It's just like chemistry. And I know that we all completely remember our high school chemistry, so this is going to be really easy. But the basic is that it's going from the least complex to the most complex. It goes from the smallest to largest, and it goes from the most general to the most specific. So those are a lot of different things. I will show you how it works. I have a super sweet GIF here that kind of shows how atoms, molecules, organisms, templates, and then pages relate to each other. I just like to stare at it because it's cool. I will go into each one of these in details, but just so you can kind of see the whole overview, here's what we're going to be talking about, then templates, and then pages. All right, so diving into chemistry. As you may recall, atoms are the smallest building blocks of an element. It is the smallest possible way that an element can exist. Now, if you're a big nerd, you also know that atoms are made up of smaller things, but we're not talking about those. We're talking about elements, and atoms are the smallest one. In HTML, your HTML elements are atoms, and as are your colors, your typography, and your utilities. I believe this link actually no longer works. I think it had to be taken down, but this is actually a periodic table of HTML elements. Which is super cool because it's actually organized periodically. So I'm like super nerd excited about it. But you can see, look at all the different HTML elements that exist, right? There's a ton, especially with HTML5 and more semantic elements. What do those look like visually, right? So these are some things you might recognize, like an image, or a heading tag, or a paragraph tag, or an input, or buttons, or colors. These all come from a website called demo.patternlab.io. PatternLab is the interactive design system version of atomic design. So it's basically a way of building and delivering atomic design websites that are platform agnostic. So they're just pure front end. It's really fun to play with. The demo is really cool to be able to see an example of how it all works. But here's some atoms. So the thing about atoms is that they don't really do much by themselves, right? Like you have a heading and it's just a heading. There it is, floating in space, not very useful. You have a paragraph, cool, that's nice. So then we want to get a little more interesting, right? And that's where we get into molecules. And if you remember chemistry, molecules are when you're combining atoms together in different ways, right? So we have a water molecule, which is made up of hydrogen and oxygen. In atomic design, a molecule is when you start combining HTML elements together in specific useful ways. What does that look like? Well, it could look like an image with a caption, or it could look like a title with a link. It might look like a navigation list, or maybe an image locked up with a little heading and a paragraph. Starting to get a little bit more interesting, but still not quite a website yet. They're still kind of floating in space there, but you're starting to recognize them as being useful, right? And that's when, you know, just like in chemistry, you combine a bunch of molecules together and you get an organism. I think the biologists would disagree a little bit on the simplicity of that, but we're just going to go with it for this particular metaphor. The way I like to explain it is that it's a bunch of molecules that come together to allow action, right? Because organisms can do stuff in real life. I'm doing something right now. You all are probably doing something. Molecules coming together to build organisms is the same kind of thing in atomic design. And you're going to start to recognize these as block level elements, which when we get into the block editor side of things, you'll see what that looks like. But basically, these are repeatable combinations of molecules that are more complex, and they're usually their own contained unit of content. So what is that? That might be an entire form, right? A form is made up of lots of different things with inputs and labels and a button all together inside the form element. It might be a grid of images with captions. It might be your header. A header is a great example of an organism because it's got a logo, it's got navigation, it maybe has a search bar, a list of posts, you know, all of these different things. So you can see here, you have your molecules, right? And then those are combining together to make organisms. And now the chemistry biology model kind of breaks because you put a bunch of organisms together and you get templates. So less fun, but we know what templates are, right? Because we're WordPress people. We've all worked with templates. This is basically, though, in atomic design, when several organisms come together to become layouts. And you can combine all of these organisms in different ways to create different templates. Which then become entire pieces of content. So you can see here is an example of these organisms and molecules that we've already seen coming together to become a template. And they're the same kind of things. You can see we've got, you know, this post grid here, same post grid over here, right? Again, you're recognizing some of these organisms, some of these molecules, they're all coming together and they have made templates. There's also the footer. The footer would be an organism as well, kind of a block level element being repeated, the headers being repeated across both of them. So there's a lot of repeatability here. But as we know, we can get even more specific, right? And that's when we get into pages. And pages are when you take templates and put specific content in them. We know as WordPress people, you could have one template and 1,000 different pages using that same template, right? So pages and templates are not the same thing. You could see, for an example here, on the left would be the template, and on the right would be the page, right? Because it actually has real content in it. And it could be different content using the same template. This is an old project we did a while ago, but this is using the same exact template, but different content in different contexts. So it's a different category, and so it has different colors and obviously different posts, but the same template, different pages, right? All right, so I talked a bunch about atomic design. But now we have Gutenberg. So I want to get a little semantic here. Gutenberg is the name of the development experiment plugin, which is used to create the features for the WordPress block editor. And now Gutenberg, the block editor merged Gutenberg into core at WordPress 5. And every iteration of WordPress since then has merged new Gutenberg features into the block editor. But just so you know, Gutenberg is the term for the plugin. The block editor is the term for the thing that we're actually interacting with in WordPress core. Nobody probably really cares about that besides us geeky people, but you know, in case you are working with a client or whatever, probably calling it the block editor as opposed to Gutenberg is a little bit more semantically correct. So we'll move on from there. By adopting Gutenberg into core, what WordPress has done is move from the content blob to structural blocks. As you know before, it used to just be the content and you just kind of put whatever you could in there, right? You know, you'd have short codes, maybe some different page builders would try to abstract stuff on top of that, but pretty much everything, if you weren't using metadata, was just going into this content blob, right? And by adopting the block editor, we are now adding structure to that content blob. And there was a pretty good quote here from the WordPress developer website that said, at the core of Gutenberg lies the concept of the block. From a technical point of view, blocks both raise the level of abstraction from a single document to a collection of meaningful elements. Ooh, that sounds familiar. And they replace ambiguity inherent in HTML with explicit structure. So from a user perspective, blocks allow any kind of content, media, or functionality to be directly added to their site in a more consistent and usable way. The Add Block button gives the user access to an entire library of options all in one place. So what does that mean in other words, right? We're coming back to our light bulb. So in other words, the block editor consists of unique, reorderable, reusable elements that can be combined in different ways to build content structures. Interesting, that sounds familiar. Because of this, the content of a page will determine the layout rather than the other way around. So this sounds extremely atomic, right? It sounds exactly like the same thing powering atomic design. What does the structure look like though? So if we're looking at block-based themes, block-based content editing, what does that look like? Well, much like WordPress overall, core will supply a basic collection of blocks, and plugins and themes can expand on top of that, right? Just like WordPress in general. So blocks provide a hybrid of the overall visuals being controlled by the theme designs and individual options within the block to fit the context the user needs. So what that means is your theme is still doing a lot of general styling, right? The theme still controls the opinion of the whole site, but each block has its own set of options that you can customize depending on how the block was written. You can customize to be appropriate for that specific action. So here's a really beautiful example of adding some buttons and customizing them, right? So the top button there is probably the default button style that came with the theme. I always use pink stuff because I like it. And then the other buttons are some very extreme examples of customization. But you can see here in my example here, if you have worked with the block editor before, you may notice that these are not the default colors that come with it. Theme authors can choose to include their own specific set of colors, perhaps ones that match the style guide or the brand guide. And they can choose to restrict you from being able to pick whatever color you want. You can do the same thing with any of the settings that come with any of the blocks. So as theme authors, we have a lot of control over what kind of styles are available in blocks. And there's even more of that coming down the pipeline, which I'll share with you at the end. All right, so let's look at the various core Gutenberg blocks as they exist now, because when you're looking at those, you can actually see examples of all atomic elements existing right now within WordPress. For example, we have access to plenty of atoms as we're editing. So like I said, those heading tags, right? Paragraphs, links, if you want to put a code block in, if you want to put buttons in, if you know, all of these colors, these are all atoms, and these are all things that you are using within the block editor right now. We also have several different molecules. An ordered and an unordered list are both examples of molecules because they are combining the individual list elements inside the wrapper. Tables with headers and footers are molecules, right? Again, you're combining several HTML elements together. A quote with a citation, images with captions, all of these things are molecules. And also all of these blocks tend to have different settings involved with them as well. Again, yeah, the image and captions, video and audio are great examples with the embed blocks. The page breaks are a great example, and there are even some experimental blocks like navigation that are an example of a molecule inside the block editor. And of course we have organisms, right? Because organisms are kind of these big, complex, fun blocks. And a lot of the ones that you're going to interact with, or the custom ones, are going to be organisms. But in core, we have the gallery block, which enables you to create a gallery. This one obviously has some very attractive gray placeholder images in it. But we also have the media and text block, which is a block that I've actually found super useful. It allows you to place, you know, an image and a text field kind of right next to each other, flip them around, add stuff inside it. It's really, really useful for making like really, really fast block-based sites. Another one that I'm sure you'll interact with is the cover image block, right? That's a big popular one. That was a good one, where you have your big image as the background. The image could be fixed, or it could be it could scroll. You can put buttons on top of it. You can put text inside it. WordPress also has some layout options like groups and columns, which are also organisms, right? Because these are much more complex blocks that you can then put other blocks inside. And again, like I said, a lot of the custom blocks, a lot of the dynamic blocks, a lot of the reusable blocks are going to be organisms, right? Because there's a lot going on. These dynamic blocks are things that maybe, you know, for example, if you have WooCommerce, you might have a block that will display recent products, right? So that's a dynamic block because it changes depending on your content. These are some custom blocks that I built, and you know, they could pull in like a list of posts or a grid of posts, stuff like that, right? A widget area. These are all more dynamic. Reusable blocks are also kind of fun. And I can show you some examples of that if you want to later, but reusable blocks are something that is included in core, where if you've built a block and you want to use it the same way in multiple places, for example, say you have a call to action like this one, and you want that call to action to show up exactly the same way in more than one place, you can place it in multiple places as a reusable block, and when you edit the content in one place, it changes everywhere. So that's kind of cool. Being that it's WordPress, we still have our standard WordPress page templates that we're used to, right? So not only the template hierarchy, which kind of powers which content is going to show up based on what type of post it is or what type of view it is. We also have our custom page templates that we're all used to, you know, maybe being able to pick a homepage template or whatever. But now we also have block templates, which is really neat. So this is an example from the events calendar. If anybody's used the events calendar, it's one of my favorites. But when you open up a new event, instead of just a blank screen, it has all of these like blank blocks in there that are already like preloaded and waiting for you. This is an example of a block template, right, for a post type. Here's a similar example of one that I built for a client. So they have a bunch of pages that needed a lot of complex stuff. And I don't know about you, but if I was a client and I had to try to rebuild this layout every single time, how frustrating would that be, right? But if I show up and this is all here, then I know exactly what I'm supposed to put in where. And it's a little bit nicer than some of those page builder options or meta field options, because I can actually see what I'm editing. With block templates, again, this is a developer thing, so you do have to be able to be writing code to create block templates. But with block templates, it's neat because I can choose to lock it so you can't add any new blocks. I could make it so you can't add new blocks, but you can delete the blocks that are here, or I can just have it free where it's like, here's a suggestion for how you can start, but really do whatever you want, right? So lots of options there. Very recently, so WordPress 5.5, I believe, block patterns got rolled into WordPress core as well. So the last time I gave this talk, these were still experimental, so now they're for real. But a block pattern is basically another kind of organism, and it is groups of blocks that can be defined and reused. So it's a little bit different than the block themselves. So, we have our, our actual blocks here. Block patterns are kind of collections of pre-formatted blocks. So for example, this one, this pink one here, is a cover block that has a title and subheading and button inside it, right? That's a pretty common use case. I didn't have to make a whole new block to make that. I just used the existing core blocks and made a pattern. Some other ones are like 3 columns with headings, or like 3 columns with an image, right? Like those are pretty common patterns that my clients are probably going to use. WordPress core comes with patterns, so you can go look at the ones that exist now. I happen to just deregister them and register all of my own instead because I'm opinionated and my clients get what I give them. But that's an example of like a really cool organism that exists now. A little bit of an example of how that looks. So this is like a pattern. This is a bunch of patterns. This is what the code looks like for registering a pattern for any of you that are developers. I kind of find it a little bit hilarious what this code is, because it is an array. So you register the block pattern, you give it a name, you give it a title, you assign it a category, right? The category kind of shows where it shows up in this list here. And then you literally copy the block markup and paste it as a string, and that's how you do it. So that just makes me laugh. So any of you that are developers, I don't know why that's so funny. Like, we couldn't just do like an array of arrays. No, we had to literally copy the markup and paste it as a string. Okay, that's cool. That's just my whatever. That's just my own rant about about that. But it is a really, really useful tool, because now my clients can have all these custom patterns for things that we talked about and make it easier for them to build really cool sites quickly. A little bit about the future of block editing. So there's a lot of stuff going on inside the Gutenberg plugin. Remember that I said the Gutenberg plugin is the ongoing development and the new features that are going to eventually be merged into the block editor. So if you want to see what's coming and get used to it and kind of incorporate it into your site now, I recommend installing the Gutenberg plugin on a site that isn't a production site, right? So what kind of stuff is going on? You can enable some of the super experimental stuff. So when you have the Gutenberg plugin installed, it will enable a bunch of new features, maybe some new blocks or some new styles it's working on. But then there's a separate section called experiments, and it has some kind of special, bigger experiments that are going on that are definitely not ready for production yet. So one of them is block-based themes, and this is a big one that's being talked about now, because everything we talked about before was within the content, right? So, the WordPress function, the_content, which outputs your content, that's where all your blocks live right now. They're in there. So everything else in your theme is exactly the same as it was. So it's basically backwards compatible, right? But this is new, and this is saying, what does it look like when your themes are block-based, when your themes are built of templates of blocks, when your header is a block, when your footer is a block, when everything is a block. So it's starting to look, and this is like a link to the developer stuff where you can read a little bit more about it. But basically there's a lot going on with block templates, block hierarchies, and what that looks like from a theme development perspective. Another example of stuff that is coming up is the global styles JSON file. Looking at the code right here, not necessarily important to know exactly what it's saying, but what it really means is like, okay, so all that stuff that I was talking about with like, right now as a theme author, I can give you like colors and I can give you stuff. Well, what if instead of having to do all of these like register and deregister functions, I just had one big settings file that I can include inside my theme that says all the settings for all the different blocks should be this by default. So giving theme authors a way to be able to control the template of stuff. So this is some cool stuff coming up in the future of the block editor. It's still all kind of experimental right now, but I believe that this is something that is available with the experimental tag to theme developers now. And of course, the big one that's coming up, whole site editing. So this is an older screenshot. I'm pretty sure it doesn't look like this anymore. But again, like I said, what if your entire site was blocks, right? You know, we talked about customization, and you could customize the content, but what if you could customize everything about the site, but depending on who you are? Not necessarily to the level of a page builder, but definitely like, what if it was just, you could build like page like layout templates inside of the block editor and then be able to build content templates and then be able to build everything. Like, it's getting kind of exciting and interesting. So all of that stuff is coming up in the future. It's one of the experiments now. So I wanted to kind of step back and do a little bit more philosophy again. I don't see any questions in the chat or anything. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. I'm putting a lot out there at you right now. But I kind of want to step back and say, all right, so I'm a theme developer, right? I'm a designer, I'm a theme developer. What is a theme in the age of blocks? Like, if everything's going to be blocks, if the whole site's going to be blocks, like, what even is a theme? Like, why am I here? Do I have a job? Should I quit? Should I do something else, right? I believe actually that themes are extremely important in the future of blocks for all of those things that we talked about inside of Atomic Design. Themes should be able to provide global styling for core blocks and all of their content, right? So if I install a theme, I know that any block that comes with WordPress is going to be thoughtfully accounted for, right? They're all going to behave very nicely together. They're all going to follow my branding that I wanted in my theme. They're all going to follow my colors, my typography. No matter how I rearrange them, they're going to make sense. That's what the theme is responsible for. The theme is responsible for these global styles. And with the global style JSON, I think that's going to get even easier. But again, it's styling all of this stuff inside the theme. It should also, like I said, curate the block editor options. So there's tons of options available for each block, all those settings, colors, font sizes, which blocks exist, which options exist, what kind of typography, whether or not it'll support like the full width versus the not full width. All of that stuff is things that a theme editor has control over, and they can make those thoughtful decisions so that it's not, you know, your client doing neon yellow with a bright green text on top of it with like a round button and then a square button. Like, if that doesn't fit their brand, we shouldn't be letting them do that, right? And so we can let them have the freedom to build really cool complex stories and really cool complex content without destroying, you know, their brand equity, right? Also, themes can do a lot of great stuff with including block patterns and block templates. So the blocks themselves are inside WordPress core, or the blocks are in plugins. I don't believe that themes should register blocks because blocks are content and they should be able to be theme agnostic. But what the theme can do is provide specific block templates. Like I said, you know, before, like, hey, you know, we have this arrangement of stuff, and the theme can provide all of these really, really great block templates for doing different arrangements of site and different block patterns for different arrangements of content. It can even provide patterns for custom or external blocks that has a fallback to a core block or a graceful degradation if that thing doesn't exist. I've done a lot of that stuff too, which is super fun. Also, you can have a theme that is specifically targeting specific plugins. So for example, I could have a theme where I'm like, you know, here's my theme. It styles all the core WordPress blocks, obviously, but it also has like super detailed styling for all of the WooCommerce blocks. So those all fit. So you know, if you install WooCommerce and you run WooCommerce blocks on here, it's going to be very, very thoughtfully designed as well. Or it could be supporting easy digital downloads, or it could be supporting the events calendar, or supporting BuddyPress, something like that, right? So themes still have a place in, like, okay, just like themes now, where you could get a, you know, an e-commerce theme or something else, right? That would be a really awesome use case for a theme. like I said, it could also support recommended block libraries. So that's a new thing that's coming out, is block libraries. So you might have heard of CoBlocks or ACF blocks or different like block libraries that you can either buy or get for free. That's a whole bunch of blocks, and maybe your theme is designed to work with that block library. So you know that testimonial block and that slider block and that pricing block is going to look awesome inside your theme, right? Because you built that theme to support that library. So there's lots of opportunities for specialization within building block themes. I want to talk a little bit about the design mindset for atomic design. So like how are we designing? One of the arguments that I've heard with anything that has to do with the design system, as soon as you start talking about systems, some people get really excited because they don't have to like think about stuff. And some people get really sad and they're like, look, aren't we just making design all be the same? Like, aren't we just turning it into something robotic? And I say no. The point of a system is to be consistent, but it doesn't mean that you have to be uniform. We're trying to enable people to be creative within a framework that makes sense. So it's not the Wild West, but it's also not just black and white, right? We're trying to create a system that enables people to be creative, but thoughtful. Again, as we're thinking about designing, remember, we're moving away from this page thing. So if you're a designer, if you're quoting mock-ups for this kind of stuff, we're not designing pages, right? We're not creating the home page and the contact page and the about page. No, what we're doing is we're like, okay, here are kind of all the blocks that exist. Here are some ways that they can be arranged differently. Here are some ways that maybe if you put these next to each other, it'll do something different than if you put these next to each other. But they're not pages, they're systems. And it'll actually be a lot easier on the designers out there. You don't have to do a million page mockups anymore. You just have to do block mockups. It's much better. If you are designing or redesigning a site, let's say you have a site that is going to be rebuilt using the block editor, one very useful thing is to look through all of the content that exists to try to identify patterns, because that can help you identify what blocks or what block patterns or what custom blocks you could use to represent that content. So you want to try to find repeatable elements and chunks of content or functionality, very similar to kind of building your own internal component library, right? But you could even do that only using core blocks or a special set of blocks if you want to. This is useful too if you're doing a whole new site. You can brainstorm the type of content that's going to be there. So like, okay, I imagine that there's going to be a whole lot of imagery. So we're probably going to be doing something very grid-based here. We're going to be doing post archives, and they're going to be discoverable in this way. So it's probably going to be these kind of layouts, right? So you can have some interesting conversations there. You want to identify your branded design elements. So again, those colors, those fonts, the things that have to do with visual storytelling. Do we have a lot of images? What is the typography? Similar to the stuff that would go in a style guide. So that's kind of your first step. You're identifying what your atoms are and how those are going to behave. Then you're taking all those patterns and you're defining what your blocks are, right? So you're like, okay, I have a sense of all the different types of content. How do I map these out? So we start mapping all of this out to core and custom blocks. With this content, is this something I can do using a core block? I believe in general with WordPress, if you can do it using core, do it that way first. And then if you have to add custom stuff on top of it, then do that. So like, all right, can I do this using a column block or a group block or nested blocks? Or is it more complex than that? Do I need custom blocks? Like, do I want to output a list of products? Do I want to output an event? Do I want to do something? Do I want a slider? Do I want testimonials? Yeah, so all of that stuff, you want to map it out. And then you have to make a plan for all those block options, right? So what happens to the block? Like, are there any color or size options? What happens to the blocks if they move around? Are you supporting custom widths? All of that stuff. These are the things that we have to think about. I do want to say I'm a huge fan of atomic design. I will talk about its benefits forever, but I do want to acknowledge the limitations of atomic design as a philosophy and as a system. One of them is, so this is kind of a nerd thing, but when you style things, there's still a limitation of CSS that you're styling relative to the page. And I know that everything is supposed to exist inside its own context where it can exist wherever it is, but like we don't have container queries yet. We can't style something relative to what its container is. We're still styling something relative to what the page is. So like widths and volumes and all that stuff is a great example. So CSS doesn't quite follow the philosophy quite yet, but it's mostly there. One that I personally struggle with. So I talked about the don't repeat yourself principle, and I find that sometimes that leads to the DTM principle, which is do too much. So if I'm like, in my block plugin, for example, I'm like, oh, well, I want a block that can output a list of posts. Okay, well, I might want to output all of the posts like in a thing, or I might want to output them just from a specific category, or I might want to output them manually, like I pick the ones. I might want to choose how many. I might want to have a view all link. I might want to output a list of all the category. Like there's like a whole, and like technically these are all using the same template, but like if I'm not careful, I could get, by trying not to repeat myself, by trying not to have lots of things doing the same thing, I might end up with a big giant block doing a million things. So it's a little hard to balance those two things. So that's just a limitation that exists. Also, I made it sound like it was really easy to identify like molecules and organisms and stuff, but like sometimes it's hard to know which is which, right? Like when does something stop being a molecule and start being an organism, right? Or like, where do you put like a helper class? Like, what about your like a read more like class, or like an alert class? Like, what is that? Is that an atom, right? So it could be a little bit ambiguous. I think it just depends on how you want to define things and how you want to talk about them. But that's something just to keep in mind. This is also, this is not a flaw in atomic design specifically, but it is a flaw in all design systems. Again, that whole thing, like, is this going to be boring? Is this going to be restrictive? Am I going to just be limited? I believe that prescriptive systems that are very rule-based, like design from above rule book, you have to do it like this, those can get controlling. But I think a descriptive design system, which is where you're basically documenting existing design and how it's being used and saying like, okay, based on this, these are probably ways that make the most sense. That can be a little bit more freeing. So anyway, those are some thoughts. I have a bunch of resources here that you could take a look at. Links to, and these slides are available online, so I can share that link. But links to learning more about the block editor, about atomic design, about style guides, prototyping. The ish tool that I mentioned there is really, really fun. It's basically a tool that gives you just like infinite varying widths of viewports to test your things out. It's called ish because it's like, you know, mobile-ish. Like there is no one resolution, right? Also, you know, this is the link to my block plugin if you want to check it out. I actually have a bunch of fun stuff up on GitHub if you want to see what I'm up to. Here also are some like just articles about modular design in general. So if you want to just like have a nice brunch and read some articles, that's what I do. You know, enjoy like a avocado toast or whatever it is I'm supposed to do as a millennial, and read some modular design articles. And there's some really great articles here as well about the future of themes. So yeah, just cool stuff. So this last slide is not out of, yeah, it's kind of out of date. I guess I haven't opened this slide since July, but that's the link to where the slides are. So that's not out of date. That's important. And this is how to get in touch with me, which is not out of date either. And otherwise, you know, where to find me next and stuff. I'm going to take a look at the chat because I saw there were a couple of little questions in there and I want to go into that. But first I'm going to have a sip of this because I talked a lot. Awesome. So there's a question in the chat. Do I need to understand and work with a JavaScript framework plus all these elements like Grunt, NPM, React, blah, blah, blah? Great question. So the reason that question was asked is because if you don't know, the WordPress blocks are built in JavaScript by default. So they're built in React, which means if you are building traditionally, if you are going to build a custom block from scratch, the traditional core way to do that would require JavaScript development. Which is fine, you know, philosophically speaking, like JavaScript is interesting. But I don't know about any of you. My JavaScript is kind of medium. Like I can jQuery it up, my vanilla is okay, but I'm not a React developer yet. Yet somehow I need to be able to build custom blocks. So if you're doing things the WordPress core way, yes, you do need to be a JavaScript developer. However, if any of you are familiar with advanced custom fields, the pro version has a custom block maker that does not require JavaScript. It just requires PHP, the same way that you've been doing custom fields and theme development already. I use it. So if you have an advanced custom, it is only in the pro version, it's not in the free version, but they literally built a PHP framework that abstracts out and renders all of the JavaScript parts for you. So all you have to do is the PHP and the HTML like you have been doing to build a theme or work with advanced custom fields in general. I just gave a talk on Monday just about the ACF block building and all the stuff you can do there. If you want to see some cool examples, there is a, if you have ACF Pro, there is a plugin called ACF Blocks, which is just blocks that are built using ACF Pro. It's pretty cool. My block plugin on GitHub, and I also have an event management plugin on GitHub. Those are all built with custom blocks using ACF Pro. So there are things out there. If you're an ACF person, you don't have to write JavaScript to write blocks, at least no more JavaScript than you would have had to do to write a theme. So that's kind of cool. Let's see if there's anything else in the chat. Any way to post links into this chat? Yeah, I can share. But again, the slides are up online, so you can go like look at them at your own thing. I think that was shared in the chat. See, I have a monitor right here, so that's why I'm gesturing. It's very pink. Ooh. What theme do I mostly use for block-based websites? That's a good question. So I use my own theme. I've been working on that theme since 2013. So it has a lot of we share the same opinions, me and my theme. There are a lot of really great themes out there though that are good. One, I don't know how to pronounce it, but this theme, Neve, is a great, if you are not a developer, it is a really good options-based theme that works super well with the block editor. I've given it to a couple of smaller clients that just wanted to be able to play with things. Another question in the chat, if I'm familiar with WP Rig. I haven't used it, I am familiar with it. It is another really great starter theme for being able to do custom theming and block work as well. My personal theme was built off of an older version of Roots. So that's a little bit more modular theme stuff. But again, there's a lot of good themes out there. Obviously also the core themes, 2021 is coming out soon, probably in 2021. And it's a really good block-based theme that has a lot of really interesting, apparently has a lot of really interesting like built-in block patterns and stuff that are really like cool and useful. So more learning there. Are there any other questions, comments, things?
Michelle, I couldn't quite visualize what you meant when you talked about patterns, and I guess I haven't been looking for it and didn't know of them. Could you give an example in the front end where we could, so that I could understand visually what you mean when you say patterns?
Yeah, I will actually share some stuff for reals, so I can show you. So let's go into me sharing my screen. All right. All right. So we're gonna go into me playing with my base theme. So this is a post in my base theme. You can see that it looks a little bit different than a normal post because another thing that I didn't mention specifically in this presentation, but is true, is it is the responsibility of the theme author to have a very good editor style sheet. If the theme author did not define an editor style sheet, the back end will just look like the WordPress generic styles. So it won't necessarily match what it will look like on the front end when people see it. So I have enqueued an editor style sheet, which means that my typography, my layout, my width, all of that stuff is going to match what it's going to look like on the front end as close as possible. So that is my responsibility as a theme author to do that. But we're going to talk about patterns. So here's the block editor in post view, and you can see here, and I gotta kind of look this way, so sorry I'm not looking at all of you. But you can see here is where you'd be inserting blocks. there's a lot of kind of traditional core blocks. You can see that the blocks have previews, which is kind of cool. That is also something you can create. And the previews actually pull in like your styling, which is really neat. But then you have patterns. And patterns are, WordPress core comes with some patterns. These are all patterns that I created that I've included inside my theme. So what patterns are is basically just a like a pre-built set of blocks. So for example, if I added, let's go down and look at some stuff. So here's a pattern that is 3-column images, which is 3 columns that have images, headings, blah, blah, blah. If I click on that, it just inserts that group of blocks into the page. But these are all, you know, this isn't a block. This whole thing is not a block. This is just a collection of blocks that I've decided might be useful for you as the content creator. And so now I can edit these. A little bit of kind of navigation if you're not super familiar with the block editor interface. So by default, you are going to see this, not the top toolbar. You're going to see this. Okay, by default, this is what you're going to see. So you're going to see the side column and the top header being gone, which is scary. But that's okay, because in this little 3 dots in the upper right corner, you can uncheck full screen mode and get those things back. I use like these things all the time, so the full screen mode is kind of obnoxious. But if you have a very small screen, it is nice for doing block editing. Another thing, this settings thing will toggle the sidebar here. So you will recognize the document sidebar from before. So it has all the things like your visibility when it's publishing. This is where your permalink went to, by the way. You used to edit it under the title. Now it's over in the sidebar. Categories, tags, featured image, excerpt, all that stuff that you're used to seeing, right? Also, I have some random fields in here because I have advanced custom fields on here, and you can still use advanced custom fields the same way you used to. If you used advanced custom fields before or something similar, you could display them in the sidebar or at the bottom of your post. That still works. But anyway, you'll see in the settings, it's document settings, but you'll also see block settings. And this is where, if you have a block selected, that is where your settings will live. So for example, if I'm in the subheading, you can see that there are some typography options. So size, line height is a new one, color settings. So these are some default colors that I'm letting them pick from. Background color as well as foreground color. What's really nice too is that the block editor is doing a little bit of accessibility stuff. So I have my default text in green, and it's kind of like, that color combination is hard to read. Maybe don't. So I could change it to something that's going to be a little bit, you know, better. The image block here has some options too. So let's say I set an image in here. So I'll give it this, this guy, right? I like to use ponies as my test images. It makes me smile. So there's rounded option. You could give it a caption and it'll show up. You can give it different dimensions. So if you want it to be tiny or 100%, pick which image size, give it alt text. So that's all, you know, block-based settings here. I have some links in here. Again, subheading has some stuff. More complex blocks might have more complex settings. So for example, I'll add another pattern. Let's add this cover block pattern up here. Let's get rid of these. These are dull. No one needs that. Let's add a cover. Covers are cool. Cover block. All right, we have a cover block. By default, it is full width. So that is this option here. If it was not full width, it would be smaller. You can't quite tell here, but there you go. Now you can tell. Whereas if I made it full width again, sure. So those are some more block options. But again, this is a pattern. It is a cover block. The cover block can have a background image. So let me give it a background image. The background image over here in the settings has this focal point picker, which is kind of awesome, right? Because then it says, you know, when the screen gets smaller, for example, like this, where should it focus? So it zooms in the right spot. It can have an overlay. So I can change my overlay color to something else. I can give it a different opacity. I can give it an overlay gradient. I've built some custom gradients for this thing, so that's pretty great. Look at that. That's beautiful. And again, this is a pattern, so it came with a cover block, a title block, a subheading, and a button. And buttons have a bunch of options, so that's super fun. So this is an outline. I could have a fill instead with like pink text and a blue background and a border radius. I mean, that's great, right? So lots of fun things in here. Yeah, I'm gonna grab the chat again to make sure that I can see it. Cool. All right. Do I tend to develop a set of patterns I use all the time or separate ones for each project? A little of both. So there are common content patterns that I've seen over and over again. And so I have those baked into my theme right now. Again, like the multiple columns, the cover image, that kind of stuff. But then I also develop specific ones on a project by project basis. So different projects will have different kinds of content. I do also have the custom blocks that I developed. So these ones where I can output, you know, a list of posts, a grid of posts, tabs, a bunch of logos in a row. These are all just things that I've seen a bunch of times, and so I built them because my clients will probably need or enjoy them at some point. This one has WooCommerce installed, so I could put WooCommerce blocks in there as well. But yeah, these patterns are just like patterns that I happen to notice were done fairly often. So like just a read more link, columns, the media, and I love the media and text block actually. That one's great. So I pre-built a pattern for the media and text block. Let's do it. Cool. I absolutely love this block. It's really fun. Media and text is I pre-populated it with like a heading and a subheading and paragraphs. What's super fun about it, you can tell it whether or not it should stack on mobile. You can give it a background color. For the image inside it, come on, do your thing. You can choose which direction it'll go, how they align with each other. So it's really sweet. This website is a website that I just, so we just had the AIGA in Minnesota just had their big design camp conference, and I was the tech person, so I built this website entirely off of my base theme and my event scheduler block and a bunch of other things that I built for that, and Gutenberg blocks. So this thing down here is just media and text blocks that alternate. Which is super cool because it looks really neat. It goes with the brand. And that's just a bunch of core media and text blocks that are like alternating and make fun things. So you can do a lot of really, really cool stuff with Gutenberg blocks really fast, which is nice. Let me look at any other. Are there any other questions, comments, random things? I could talk all day, so.
I was curious what you said when you mentioned that you would encourage someone to install the Gutenberg plugin, but isn't that just a part of, like if I had a WordPress 5, I wouldn't need the Gutenberg plugin.
So the Gutenberg plugin is ongoing development of new features. Right, sorry, you were muted, so I didn't know if you were still
No, please continue.
Yeah, so the Gutenberg plugin is ongoing development of new features, which means that so WordPress core has features that have already been considered like done, right? And so like they're out, but they're constantly building new stuff for the block editor all the time, and those live inside Gutenberg. So if you want a heads up of what's coming next, what they're working on next, for example, WordPress 5.5, they restyled the interface a little bit. Which is like a little bit nicer. But if you were following the Gutenberg plugin, you would have had that for like a few months and had already seen it and be able to like develop your styles against it. Now, I don't necessarily recommend the Gutenberg plugin for a production site because sometimes they introduce things that maybe have like style conflicts or kind of break other plugins that are relying on the block editor. I know the Gutenberg plugin for a little while was having some conflicts with Event Tickets Plus, where it was just rendering the styles weird on the front end. So I don't have it on a production site, but on my local sites, I do install it because that way it's like if there's new blocks that they're coming out with, or if there's new settings that they're coming out with. Some of the new settings they came out with was like they're working on custom padding for the cover image block. So actually I could probably take a look at that. I could just enable, I'll enable the Gutenberg plugin now, and then we can see what's different. So, or I can tell you what's different because I've been staring at it all the time. All right, so I've just activated Gutenberg plugin on my local site, and I will go to a pattern page. Let's go there. Let's look at one of these pages. All right, cool. So I have Gutenberg, cover image. Okay, this one does not have padding, so that they may have not done that, or it could be because it's a pattern. But yep, a couple different text blocks. Oh, they have navigation in here, so that's interesting. I can add a navigation block. So that one is not out yet. So this is just in Gutenberg, but if I want to add a navigation inside a page, which might be really useful if you're trying to build some custom layouts, that's a new thing. Different embed supports are in there. Let's look, what else is interesting? I know that in the last go around, line height didn't used to exist as an option, so now it is. I wonder if there's anything in like the image blocks or anything that might be new. Anyway, I don't actually know, like right now what's in, I know that they had some interesting patterns were in the last iteration of Gutenberg, and that's how I started developing them. I actually developed them before 5.5 came out for a client whose site was going to be launching right around the same time, so that I'd have all that stuff there, so that when WordPress supported it, it was good. Yeah. All right, so the question in the chat, I'm a designer. Since blocks are not built in a WYSIWYG fashion, I find it difficult to orient and position my organisms and molecules. Any insight on how to properly understand this within the editor? It still doesn't feel completely friendly. I hear you. The editor is still kind of like a 65% good interface and a 35% why does it do this interface. So I hear you there. There are a couple of things to make it a little bit easier and a little bit less frustrating to interact with some of the editors. So I can show you that. For one thing, so by default, you can see when you edit blocks, you get this little like inline block options thingy, which is fine, but like also is annoying because like if I'm editing this paragraph, I can't see my heading, right? Like what even, that's annoying. So there's a setting up here called top toolbar. And if you enable top toolbar, it puts your settings right up there in the top instead. So now, instead of overlapping my content, it's up here and it's always up here and it's easier to find. The only downside about that is, so let's select a block, for example. I've selected my image block. We have these arrows, up and down arrows, so I can move it around, you know, move it in different positions. The one thing you can't do, wrong button. The one thing you can't do when it's in top toolbar mode is this, and that's where, oh, that's new. Oh, good. Yes, they fixed it. Okay, so right now in the block editor, you have to like grab the block by the arrows to move it around, but Gutenberg plugin is showing me that they've added this drag block thing. Hooray. So now it's easier to drag it around. Thanks. That's great. See, this is the stuff you get to learn when you have the Guten. So, so you can drag it around, which is a little bit easier than it was where you had to like carefully hover over the arrows in the right way to drag it around. That's something to be aware of. Another thing to be aware of is, you know, if you're in a very convoluted layout, like, you know, if I'm inside a column or whatever, and I have a bunch of things, and I want to actually select the column, right? Like I want to change the width of this column. Columns have options. You can change their widths, right? You can change different stuff, but it's really hard. Like, how do I select? I'm selecting the paragraph. Like, oh my God, this is awful. So one, if you hover over the little icon for whatever block it is, you can go to the parent block. So the parent block is the column, and now I can actually select the column and like mess with the, you know, the widths like I want to. or I could select all of the columns overall, because let's say I actually want this to be 3 columns instead of 2 now, right? Or I want my columns to actually have like this background, well, not that. I want them to have like a background, you know? So, ooh, link color is one that's new too. That was not a setting before. So now we can actually set our link colors, which is nice because if you're styling text, you know, let's say I have a link here. But I want this to actually be, I want to have a pink background. No, pink background. I know how to use this. So now my link doesn't show up, right? So I can actually give a link color now, which is great. That's new. So that's better, because before, when there wasn't a link color, you could see that it would style the text, but not the link. So this is a new thing that's coming out. This is in the Gutenberg plugin right now, giving your links a color. So that's nice. But again, you know, that's nice. So you can be on a block. You can select the parent block by hovering over the little icon. You can select the parent that way. Or, so in the top toolbar, there's this thing that looks like a hamburger menu that's falling over. This little stepping stair thing. This is your tree view, which is also known as the outline. And this shows you like all the blocks that are inside a group of blocks and how they relate to each other. So that's like super useful to me, because now I can see like what's there, like if something's behaving strangely, or like why is that spacing doing, like, then I can see, oh, okay, like I have a heading, I have columns, I have a column, I have a heading, I have a paragraph. And it's really easy to be like, okay, I want that paragraph. And now that paragraph is selected and I can do stuff with it. Or I can be like, no, I actually want to go out to the whole entire group, which is all that stuff together, right? So that's a really useful way of making the editor a little less difficult to use, is this little tree view thing. The info button is also super cool. So this gives you your character count, your word count, your heading count. It also gives you the outline, so you can make sure that you're nesting all your headings properly if you're caring about like semantics and stuff. So that's super neat. That's, again, this little info icon. I could like zoom in on this a bit, I guess. There you go. So info icon gives you details about your document, which is really nice to make sure your structure is good. This thing gives you your view of kind of everything that's inside an element. That's kind of nice. If I go here, you know, this one is a group that only has a couple things in it, right? This one here is a group that has several things in it. So that's really nice. Just takes you up to whatever the parent level element is. Yep. Let's see if there's anything else that I could tell you that makes it a little bit easier. Oh, yeah, this is cool. So code editor. All right, this is fun. So if you switch it to code editor, see these exclamation point things? So the exclamation point things, those are called HTML comments, and that's actually how blocks are outlined in your content, so that the block editor is smart and it like parses these HTML things and turns it into like semantic HTML output. But this is what a block looks like in code view. So it's written with a lot of comments. And if you programmatically are writing block patterns, you are going to literally, this is how you can make a pattern and then add it to your theme. Literally build it here and then like copy that code and paste it as that string in that array. So again, developer thing. You can't create patterns if you are not comfortable with code, but you can create reusable blocks. So I talked about reusable blocks. I'll get out of the code editor. So let's say I want these exact columns to exist in lots of places. Like I want exactly these 2 columns with exactly this content everywhere. It's very, very valuable content that everybody needs to see on like all my pages. Here, I can hit add to reusable blocks. And what that does is I can give it a name called my great columns, right? And save it. And now it is available as a reusable block called my great columns. If I go to another page, I'll leave this. Goodbye page, goodbye forever. If I go to another page, you can see that my pages have a pattern template already applied to it. That's what my pages look like when you go there. Sometimes it takes a little while to load because there's all the JavaScript things. So my great columns shows up here. If I edit this here, it will change it everywhere. So it's a little different than a pattern. This is an actual, like, this block physically will exist exactly as it is on multiple pages. Again, not really useful for columns, but maybe really useful for like a call to action that needs to repeat, or like a sign up form or something that needs to repeat. And that's something you can do without any code. You can just add it to your reusable blocks. Yeah. Any other? Ooh, how did I get to code editor? Yeah, so that was under the little 3 dots, and there's an editor, and you can just code editor, visual editor, code editor. Another thing that can make this a little bit useful, so under tools, I'm going to go back to visual editor. You have a block manager. Block manager is like, which blocks do I actually want to show up? Because I don't know about you, but there's a lot of blocks. And yes, you can, you know, if I'm out here and I'm looking for a block, like, yeah, I can search for what I want, right? That's nice, you know, filter and search. But like, sometimes I don't know what it's called and I'm just trying to find it, and there's like a billion, and I'm like, do I really need a cloud up embed here? Like, what even is that? I don't know. You can go to the block manager and choose which ones are going to show up in your list and like uncheck them. If you're just like, you know, I don't want any of the, like, I want only 2 WooCommerce things. I want, you know, why would I want custom HTML? I don't want that to show up. So this is nice just to make your interface a little better. Again, lots of things are found under the 3 dots. Just look for 3 dots. You'll find more options.
Is there a way to easily get to your reusable blocks? The only way I can find to do it is from within a poster page. And there's how do I find my reusable block library?
So right here under
I see
tools,
it there.
But yeah, but then it takes you to your secret post type.
I just have to bookmark that.
Yes. So it is, and I will put it in the chat. I know how to use a computer. The name of the post type is WP block. That's how you get there. It doesn't have its own thing.
So there's not a way that I've missed about how to get to it.
There is not a menu item, no.
Okay.
But that's the secret link. Yeah, reusable blocks have their own custom post type that is hidden from the menu.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, praise, adoration? Again, feel free to type it in the chat if you don't want to say it out loud. Oh, yay! Woohoo! I saw that. Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot to take in, and I actually made it a point when we all went into quarantine to really dive into the block editor as like the thing that I was going to do, because I wanted to be able to come out of this being able to give more of this talk, right? Being able to kind of explain this to other people, because some of it's documented well, some of it is not. When you start getting into some of the custom development stuff, it's a little bit of the Wild West right now. Like, it's kind of bleeding edge. Like, we're inventing it as we go. Again, that's why I really like having the Gutenberg plugin on my local sites, because I can see like, oh great, we added a dragging thing. Like, oh great, we added a link color manager. Thank goodness. Like, super good to kind of find out what's coming up next. And yeah, so yep, stuff like just started playing with theme development using blocks. Yeah, I as a designer, I really like, and as an atomic design person, again, I really like the block editor. I think it is a much better potential experience than any of the other experiences we've had. I never really used page builders because I am a developer. Page builders do have a place. I think of page builders as a tool for people that are not developers but have lots of opinions, right? That's what a page builder is for. And a page builder gives you more granular control over very specific, like, I want this padding and this spacing, you know, so I want to build everything. Whereas the block editor is a lot more about, I want to craft a specific story out of this content. Like, how can I build this content using like the blocks thoughtfully? Where can we find the links to the slides? Yeah, that'll get pasted in the chat again. Definitely. I keep all of my slides up on Speaker Deck, so easy to find. Yeah, I had other things I was gonna say, but I got distracted because there's like a lot of pink right here. It's very shiny. There it is. Yep, there's the link in the chat for those slides again. And the ones that are up on I probably need to update the ones that are up on Speaker Deck because they might have slightly older screenshots in them. It's constantly changing. So don't feel bad if you don't know everything because I don't either. And I'm trying to know everything on purpose. So
maybe I think in the past we have kind of like if you stop sharing, then maybe everybody can see each other. And if anybody wants to in that way be able to, although we don't have many folks sharing their videos, it's fine. But yeah,
sure.
Questions for each other or any final
and
questions?
I saw the question, how do you position text within a block, not alignment, but spacing like indents, etc. So they are working on adding some padding controls to different blocks. I do not believe that is out yet. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So do you think they're going to put in any more for, let's say, dynamic things like text sliding in and motion effects into the Gutenberg?
I don't think that's going to go into core. I think a lot of that is going to be either taken care of by the theme or custom blocks. So one great example is that AIGA Minnesota design camp site that I shared. I had to put that whole thing together like really fast because it was, for an event. But on that site, there is, I'll just share my screen again so you can see it. All right. So on that site, there is a timeline. Like this thing has been going on for 40 years and they wanted to share. So this timeline thing with this little animation here is a block that I got. Like it's a block that's out there. I downloaded it. I put it on here. I did a little CSS to make the colors alternate like that. That wasn't built in, but everything else was built into it. So picking an icon, picking how you wanted the stuff to alternate, picking whether you wanted it to show a day, how you wanted it to work. All that stuff was like settings inside I could show you because I can do that. But this has a little bit of animation. So it provided its own JavaScript and did all that stuff. I personally try to put a little bit of like UX delighter animation into things. So like, hover states that move slightly or whatever. I think a lot of that is going to be up to oh, that's so slow. There we go. Show you so this is a timeline block. It's a custom block that I downloaded. It has a whole bunch of settings, ways that you can do stuff, how many items, whether you want them to, how you want the arrows to align, top, bottom, how you want it to stack, whether you want it to be, left align, right align, center aligned. This thing had some spacing options, so you could do lots of different stuff with the spacing. So this is all built into like just how the block kind of works. So this is just up to the block author to come up with that. But this one gave lots of options. So like, do I want rounded corners? How much padding do I want? All that's dependent on the block author. Mm-hmm.
Is that the ultimate add-ons? Like they have a content or they have a timeline.
Yeah, let me see. I could tell you. Yeah, that's that.
Okay.
It was cool. Yeah, it was one of the only ones I found that didn't make you have to do it with posts. So I just wanted to just throw stuff in here, like not with posts. They have one for posts too, which is cool.
Sure.
Yeah, but anyway. Yeah, just a random example. So all blocks can be customized using CSS. Yes, so they are elements just like anything else. Just like anything you've ever done with WordPress, some of them might have very, very opinionated CSS, and some of them might be more willing to take on the CSS from your theme. But if you've got, the inspector and you can see what all the classes are, you can overwrite whatever you want, as long as you get specific enough in CSS. So like what I did with this one is I just wrote a little, like I use Sass, so I just wrote a little loop. So you can see in the back end, it didn't load all my well, you can't see it anymore. It didn't load all my custom like colors because I didn't load that into the back end. I was just doing that really quick on the front end to try to get it out the door. Yeah, CSS, you can customize any block. Some of them will be harder than others. Will any of the customization be lost with theme updates? It depends on where you put it. So I recommend if you are customizing CSS and that's all you're going to do, to use the CSS editor in the customizer. If you do not know where that is, I will just show you again. So under appearance, you have, oh my goodness, blah. Customize. Okay. Yep. So if you've never done this before, and you have CSS things that you want to change and you don't have a child theme and you don't want to deal with it, there's an additional CSS box in your customizer. Look, I even did one. That's where you can put your CSS snippets. What's really nice about it is that it'll give you like a live preview of it here. So like, you know, I'm not gonna edit this now, but that's a good spot to put CSS customizations if you just have to, and then those stay in your customizer. They don't change with your theme. Cool.
No other questions in the chat? Yeah, awesome.